Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Taylor, and welcome to another episode of Storyteller Studio, episode 17. That's a lot of episodes. Tonight, we're discussing interacting with unexpected story and hidden subtitle because it doesn't fit on the screen or in the Twitch title is and what to do when you don't like it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, we have cool people here to discuss story with me. So we need to introduce them. Why are there two Sarahs?
I could be Sarah tonight. We'll share.
It. But first, we'll introduce Matt. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing really well. Happy to be here. Best social interaction I get all week.
I'm glad. I'm glad you're here. I'm not glad that it's the best social interaction you get all week. That's unfortunate for you. But
I feel like I just want to go and spend time in a crowd, but I know that's how people get sick.
Have problems. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it.
All right. Just say no to crowds.
Go gather up all of your children's teddy bears and arrange them around you.
Just totally E.T. inside of that pile of
just sit in that pile of teddy
animals.
bears and then turn on a YouTube video of just a crowded room. And then just sit there and channel your inner role player.
Are we going to have to put that up on your YouTube channel or something when I do that? I'm sure it would be a really serene moment.
It would probably creep me out a lot. So
yeah,
let's not. But if it makes you feel better and it's in the safety and privacy of your living room, you can do whatever you need to do, man. I don't judge.
America.
Indeed. Speaking of other people who live in America, how are you, Sarah?
Ooh, segue.
Doing good. In fact, I'm so excited to be here. Sometimes I'm here twice.
That's true. You are here twice. Actually, now you're here all the time. If there is a show, Sarah is on it. As is also Chantel. How are you, Chantel?
I'm good. I was going to laugh at the length of the segue that took us from Matt to Sarah, but that was actually a really smooth one. Good job.
Yeah. Speaking of smooth, we have Frito in his head.
Yes, you kept me in my head. What? I'm confused.
It's smooth.
No, it's not. I haven't shaved in all of quarantine. So
on the
6
camera,
weeks?
It looks smooth.
That's because there's no hair up here.
Right, so smooth. It was a good segue, and now it's dead.
Oh,
I didn't understand it. I'm sorry.
You could have just hit him with a compliment and said he was smooth, but maybe better. There's
I figured
chances
the bald
in
guy
the future.
Could talk to the bald guy, and it would have been fine.
Okay, cool.
But we can't all have lustrous
Smooth
heads
operator,
of hair like
but...
yours. Anyway,
Welcome
how are you,
to Storyteller Studio.
Yes.
I woke up
good.
7 minutes.
Welcome to our dysfunctional family.
I'm good. I'm just happy to just sit here and talk with people and to have them walk me back from the precipice. I don't know. To get some better, not that precipice. We'll get to it.
It's not good.
We'll get to it. The one that Belmir's on.
Okay. I'm just saying.
But to get a better understanding of.
Are we
To
broken?
get a better understanding
What's
how we're all broken. Today's just not gonna happen. Today's just gonna be a bunch of people talking over each other. It's fun.
These are the best episodes. Anyway, so I'm gonna turn the time over to our host, Peter. Frito. I don't know.
That's fine. So there was a thought for the show, and then kind of a plan, and then interesting things happened throughout the various sessions that happened last week here on Do Respite, and me being the newest person to the genre had some very interesting reactions for the record, I never said hate.
Chantel
I said-
did go back and tell me that on the day of.
I did say starting to dislike.
We've been friends a long time. I can read your passive aggressivism very well.
And so it kind of turned into this idea of how do we as players and as GMs tell a story that, can have twists and turns and can have unexpected things and can have things that some people might not be okay with. But at the same time, I feel like there's a kind of a risk to that. And it might just be me spitballing of how do you keep someone interested in a story and engaged in what's going on when they have a plot twist of, I don't like this place, I don't want to be here, get me out of here, because pretty city that we left. So yeah, we'll start there.
I have a question before going any further,
Okay.
which is whether or not it touched any of your lines and veils.
No,
Okay.
It didn't. Like, me personally, I'm completely cool with the idea of this shadow realm, but one of the things that I've been dealing with as Belmir is kind of this forced destiny that he's slowly coming to terms with of, okay, fine, I can't actually escape this idea of being Sazgamoth's herald or scribe or whatever. I can't escape from that. So we're kind of coming to terms with that. But for me as a player, I associate this shadow realm with a choice that was forced upon my character that I'm slowly coming around to. So I have in my mind kind of this idea that I don't like this place because bad things happen here that are outside of my control. Granted, totally deserved because impaling hands on spikes and reading book and a whole bunch of stuff that happened leading up to that point. But how can we be, as characters, we change based off of the story. How do you deal with, I guess, not being comfortable with where your character's going?
I mean, talk to your GM. Number one.
Yeah.
You're just like, hey, I'm not super down with this. Can we talk this through? Right. Sarah did that with Somerset, just as an example, because one of the tropes of Somerset and one of the things that really came to light in this most recent episode, go watch it if you haven't. It's our best episode yet, in my opinion. Was understanding why these consequences have been happening and what the storytelling impetus behind them was. But Sarah came to me very early and said, I don't like this, this, and this that are happening to these other players, and they're okay with it. I'm not. And so I had to make a conscious storyteller decision and friendship decision and GMing decision to not do certain things to Magpie and to Margaret that did happen to other people, and had to come up with a reason as a storyteller why that was a thing. And in Margaret's case, it's the necklace, but which has been explained in another episode. In regards to Belmir, you and I had a conversation about, hey, I want to explore this book and go with this book as a thing. And I was like, okay, cool. We'll run down that road. In that same token, you have the ability to be like, this is it.
Yeah.
We're good, right? Don't need to go any deeper into these deep, dark woods, and then we can change something around. As for associating something with the dark section, right? Like being in the nether, which is what it is, and experiencing what's going on in the nether. The nether is not just Sazgamoth's prison. The nether is a whole big scary place. in my opinion, it's a good thing that Belmir associates it with those negative things. It's a big character development moment, and it gives you a reason to play Belmir slightly more cautious, slightly more scared, slightly more concerned for his own physical, mental, spiritual, and ecumenical well-being, right? Because he's in a place that bad things have already happened once. Why would they not happen again? So I think I have to also wonder, and it's a question for you that's only slightly related, but if you had left Sosgamoth's island, if you had left Oscus and gone through the gate and found yourself in the Nether, you would have just carried on as though there were nothing different. But on some level, it comes across as you got to go be in Kalishniketh for a brief period of time. Behind the scenes changes related to casting happened. I had to find a way to integrate Sarah into the game. You guys went to go get Sarah's character from where Sarah's character was, and now essentially you had this, dog bone of, hey, look, it's close. No, you can't have it now. And is that the bigger problem, or is the bigger problem role-playing out essentially the PTSD that Belmir's experiencing?
Go ahead, Chantal.
Just piggybacking off of that before you answer the question, it also sounds like it's a question of, or a query on character versus player. Like, is the character in discomfort, or is the player in discomfort? Who is experiencing that? And it's really hard sometimes, especially when you are new to play or new to a character, because I find that sometimes with character where it like, because it's a new character, I can't tell whether I don't like something that's happening or whether the character doesn't like something that's happening. And separating those two can be quite relieving sometimes. Yeah.
I think part of it is, and this is a thought that I had this afternoon, kind of thinking through things, is I don't feel like we came into this mansion and I envision, we have a level 50 boss in front of us that based off of the description, it's probably about right. He's horribly overpowered and could kill us by blinking. And I'm unprepared as a player and as a character to deal with that, and not necessarily seeing a way out, besides the fact that he said there is one, and we've talked about the fact that we do have a way to leave. It's just whether or not we, as personally or as a group, are willing to make that decision. And I think that's where some of the dislike, or the kind of the situation that I'm in is, I don't have the tools or whatnot to deal with this situation, but I also don't see a way of us getting out of it that I'm okay with. That being, sacrificing a friend to be able to get away.
This is I feel like this is the Eternium Gate discussion episode. But I
think all of this very much applies to how Somerset City is played out for a season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where it's like preempting the idea that we can't find a way out of a situation is sort of the fastest way to assume, it's the fastest way for us not to be able to get out of it. Like the second you go, we can't fix this, we won't be able to fix this. Like, and in Eternium Gate's situation, Sage has no magic. Sage is basically helpless in this situation. But, they're still going to do stuff. They're still going to find a way. They're still going to troubleshoot and see what they can do to help in the environment. If I kind of went, okay, Sage doesn't know what to do and Sage can't do anything from here, then I would be sitting there dejected for the next, I don't know, 21 hours of play.
And
Mhm.
it also kind of goes back to, do you trust your GM or your storyteller? Do you trust that they have a cool story in mind and that there is a way for your character to do cool things? Or do you think that your storyteller is a jerk and they're just going to show you their super powerful, cool villain that they made and now they're going to crush all of you and then TPK your party on purpose? Because that wouldn't be a very cool story for anybody else. So you have to trust that your storyteller has a cool story in mind, and his cool story that he has in mind isn't just that he made a super cool villain and now he's gonna kill you all.
We still need that
It's-
that GM versus player session.
It's kind of funny as you guys have described your approaches. I realize that in some situations you have to fully invest in the character and also dissociate with the character enough to view it from the outside and appreciate the story that that character is interacting within. Because there's been moments when my character was in a bind without a way out and it was uncomfortable, and I had to say, okay, there's a story here that I can appreciate looking at it from the outside, but it really sucks being this character in this predicament right now. And so I had to say, well, this character has trauma from what happened, and so I'm going to play that trauma, but I'm also going to appreciate from the outside that this is good storytelling. And I don't like being in it, but I like that it's a story that is unfolding and that the group can participate in and enjoy.
Yeah, that's definitely something I find I have a problem with. Having that separation between character and enjoying the cool story. I guess I'm just not mature enough for that yet.
I don't know, but I think both for the last session of Eternium Gate, all of Somerset, yes, there is an interesting story going on that is surprising at times, especially Saturday. Go watch it. Shameless plugs galore, because it was very good from a spectator, and half the time I've been lost in what's going on there anyway, and trying to piece together. Wait, what story? I actually want to go back through and rewatch the entire series and take extensive notes and be like, okay, in this plot line, this person is this person and that, and have just, a beautiful mind note cards and string all over the wall just to figure out what the heck is going on. And then I'll spoil it in chat. But
It's gonna be a rough season finale.
so from a storyteller's perspective, how have you kind of walked back, or brought, I guess, some peace of mind to players that might be sitting a little uncomfortable with how a session has played out or what's going on?
I mean, generally, I have to know, right? But at the same time, having not had, not wanting to spoil things with Somerset. Somerset is one of the biggest examples of all you have to do is go watch Somerset and look at some of the decisions I make as a storyteller, some of the technical things we do on screen. Somerset is a giant experiment in the limits of tabletop role-playing games, in my opinion. Intentionally. I have a group of people that I trust and that I feel like trust me, and so we play with stuff. I've had a character disappear and become a different character for 2 sessions with the same player. We have all of those things, and if you think it's confusing to keep track of as an audience member, keep track of it as the storyteller, especially one who doesn't take notes. But it happened very early, where the very first person, because Chantel has said to me in other games, like, hey, as long as the story is cool and there's a reason, I'm good with more or less anything, right? So if you go back and watch, Audrey is the first person to start experiencing changes. And it becomes very interesting very quickly with Audrey. And so then we started to branch out into experimenting with other people having more substantial changes. And Sarah came to me very quickly and was like, nope, I would literally rather Margaret die. If you want me to play someone else, because that's what you're saying to me, no, not die. Margaret has to leave, cannot die. I will not let her die. She just has to go to like a private island that she owns. She's not allowed to die, or I will quit and never play with you again. And I'll create somebody different. And I had to say to Sarah, that's not what's happening here at all. And with Sarah, we had to figure out a reason why, if you pay very close attention, Margaret hasn't gone through the same kinds of changes that everybody else has. Margaret has experienced weird backstory shift stuff. But even those are usually tamer than everybody else's. And the explanation, this has come up a few sessions ago, was Margaret's amulet and the way Margaret interacts with the world. And so we just altered how the story was being told for that character, right? If you came to me and said, hey, I'm really not okay with where Belmir's going, this whole being a herald not by choice thing, we would have a long conversation about his curiosity and how you dove into the book, and that's really what set everything up. Yeah. But if you were still super not good with it, you guys set her free. She's now very much capable of choosing her own herald, and it's possible she wants ones that's willing. So someone probably would show up and take the book and the inkwell from Belmir by force, right? To be like, this is mine now. And then we would move on from there, right? You would have that role taken away from you. I think the biggest and most important part as a storyteller, if a player comes to me and says, hey, I'm not comfortable with the story is going. As a storyteller, my number one opinion on a story is don't be so married to... Don't write your ending before your characters and your players get there. When I introduce players in actual plays, I say, and the important people who are going to really bring the story to life are over here. Because I have my framework... You guys move the pieces in that framework, and that determines what happens. You're not on rails. You're not going anywhere that you don't get to choose, right? So if you wanted to change things with Belmir, Sarah changed things with Margaret, those kind of things. It's the same. It's the church answers of trust your GM, talk with your GM, talk with your fellow players, right? Like it's those things, because until you do, I don't have a way to know, right? And your storyteller doesn't have a way to know, but also they probably think what they've set up is cool, and they probably aren't doing it to hurt you. They're not doing it to make you uncomfortable. They're just doing it to tell a cool story, and they think, hey, you can be a part of this. The thing that I don't like, and the thing that I have experienced, and I'll throw Katie under the bus because I know she's in chat, but also will be here later. Katie had a tendency for a long time of when something went some way in a story that Katie wasn't uncomfortable with, Katie would change characters. Katie would rather leave a character behind, kill a character, swap characters. And I think Katie can admit, and I know for me as a storyteller, that was not satisfying, and it was often very jarring as a thing. So that's the extreme circumstance of a thing. Death by GM is not a cool thing to go through as a storyteller. Even when you get to do it a cool way, it still sucks to pull off and to have to storytell through.
Good. Okay. I guess how, because the other thought in the back of my mind, is what about the rest of your party? And it kind of comes down to, because I can see from Eternium Gate or even within Somerset, there are inclinations of certain people wanting to do certain things. You know, in the case of Cobalt and Peregrine, they seem gung ho to go after Gunter. And aside from splitting the party, trying to find some other way out, you know, I guess from a storytelling perspective, you have a plot twist. Something happens, some big reveal or whatnot. How, I guess, have there been situations where the party is split on what to do? And does that really just come down to 3 hours of standing in the street saying, are we going to light the tavern on fire, or are we going to throw some holy water on it? You know, are we going to turn it into a church, or are we going to burn it down?
I mean, that's a whole thing of its own. It's like party indecision.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of different ways of reconciling that. One of them is often just have an odd number of people so that you can have a tiebreaker. But if you don't want to do that, or you can't do that, I mean, really, it's just communicate with the group. And sometimes it can be really fun. Like, I mean, I really enjoy messing with Eric in times like that, where it's just like, oh yeah, the rest of the party's doing this. Great. I'm going to go over here and do exactly the opposite, because that'll mess everything up more. But at the same time, I wouldn't do that with every GM. I wouldn't do that with every group of people that I play with, because it's not necessary. Like, I am very chaotic as a player. Like, I'm very happy to like go with whatever's fun. Yes, Sage has died many times, but I find that to be a cute quirk of hers. So yeah. It it comes down to like communication. If it looks as though the rest of the party really wants to just do this other thing, then I'm going to go ahead and do this other thing. And there will be time for me to be chaotic later. And there will be times when the group will go along with it. And there are times when the group won't. And I'm not about to push people in a direction that they don't want to go. In any sense of the word. Like, it's like, for example, Sage will take someone's hand and do something that Sage wants to do, but that person is free to be like, actually, I don't want to hold your hand. I'm going to take it away. Okay, cool. Every action is an individual's action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking a lot when you talked about indecision and being outside of a building and not knowing what to do. Reminded me of an adventure I was on, and we knew the bad guy was inside the warehouse, and we spent like probably 3 hours, what would have been 3 hours in real time, just talking about whether we go into the building. And I think it helps to remind yourself that very few questions in real life are binary. So it's not, do we go into the building or do we not? It's, well, can we go into the lobby, or can we can we peer in through the second floor window? Can one person enter, and then that'll be our testing of the waters kind of thing. And I think if you remind yourself that it's probably not as binary as it seems in the choose your own adventure format. Sorry, hopefully I'm not infringing on copyright there, but it's helpful, because you can then do that thing that's not exactly all in or all out. It's that thing that actually gets you more information so you can get on the same page.
And that was one of the things that we talked about at like fair amount of length in the postmortem of AG last week, was because at the moment, Belmir saw two options, and I saw two options: fight and lose, or stay here forever. And
Can
it's
confirm are more than two options. Just
Not
Sounds
disclaimer.
like a boring
because-
game.
because to me, sacrificing Carter was not an acceptable option, and so I didn't even consider it to be something on the table. And looking out at the end of this episode, we come to this cliffhanger. We're like, okay, great. I have no idea what we're gonna do next week, and I can try and plot and scheme and turn off my analytical brain, which never happens, to figure out what to do. Besides the fact that I could just say, huh, and let the first 20 minutes of the episode play out where all the other four people say, this is what we want to do and this is what our intentions are based off of what just happened. And then
So
rolling with that.
Something to
can I ask
go ahead, Santo.
can I ask a question again? And it's basically the same question again.
Mhm.
Would Belmir panic and do nothing in this time? Because if that's the case, or is it Belmir panicking or is it Frito panicking? Because if it's one or the other, then that's fine. If it's
Mhm.
both, that's also fine. It's just being aware of that difference.
And that was the question I was going to ask you. In that moment, did I then not do my job? Because if you look at Somerset, again, go watch Somerset, Sarah cries during Somerset because Kyle makes Margaret cry. Katie cries during Somerset because the events of Somerset make Katie and I want to say Amelia, and that's wrong. That's next
Gabby.
game. Gabby cry. Jeff cries during Somerset because the events of Somerset make Jack cry. The objective in an RPG for me and for how I tell stories is to make you feel something, whether it be excitement at a cool action sequence, whether it feel tension at a potential cliffhanger that's scary, whether it's the depth of emotion that you feel as your antagonist lays a bunch of information on the table monologue style. You're feeling something, and in that moment, as you came into a cliffhanger of, oh my gosh, here we are trapped in Weiss Manor in the Nether, how do we get out of here? Assuming that's the same feelings that Belmir is having, you're more in character than you've ever been in that moment because you're experiencing that. And coming into it with, yes, a thought process and yes, okay, what are we going to do? But having had, a stupor of thought about it for a week or whatever, it still keeps you in character. You haven't come at it with, okay, here's my super in-depth plan that Belmir came up with in 7 seconds.
Plotting and scheming over 7 days.
Right. And so one of the things to keep in mind is I get a lot of commentary, or have gotten a lot of commentary in the past. I don't currently. We get commentary on other things. Commentary in the past about, well, you're a shock factor GM. You like to shock players, and I don't feel like that's true. I like to make my players feel things, and I really like cliffhangers. I like, if the Disney 101 Dalmatians animated show where they watch the dog cartoon, and it says, stay tuned, the bad thing happens, you hear the gunshot, he falls in the water, stay tuned next week and find out what happens, right? And there's just that and then the TV goes off. That's the kind of stories I like to tell, and I try to end most sessions on a cliffhanger because it makes my players be like, why is it a week until next session? Why can we not just turn stream back on and play for 3 more hours now? And as a GM, that's my drug. That's my reward for a session well done, is people being like, I want to play again now, rather than, all right, in a week, sure, see you then.
Sure, we'll go shopping next week. That's fine. No, but no, I think that's a valid point. It keeps us as players interested, and hopefully as the audience as well interested in wanting to come back, because if everything was safe and sound on a typically fairly tense roller coaster of emotions up to a certain point, and then it has this very long letdown at the very end, people would be a little, well, what's coming next? Is this a calm before the storm, having no forecast going on that far?
Or, as I have experienced, and I think as Sarah can attest to, we had games where scheduling was a problem, where I was frequently trying to end episodes on points that would make sense if the network canceled the TV series at that point, right? So where your audience is least enraged. And now I have slightly more power than I had then. And I don't ever want there to be this, okay, well, what happens if the network cancels the TV show feeling? And if I leave it on a cliffhanger, you guys always come back, right? Like, I don't have to live in this. There's a subconscious fear, as most GMs, that your players are going to get bored playing your game and choose not to come back to your table. And if I leave you amped up with your emotions at 11, raw around the edges every week, you want to come back just to make that feeling go away. And I like to think that every episode kind of spikes up, and then you get your slight dip, and it spikes up again as you build toward a finale. And then a finale will spike down hard and then slowly elevate to make you care again. That's my hope, at least. That's the design as a storyteller. And so I think on some level, interacting with story in a world where you're uncomfortable, if you're so uncomfortable that it's player discomfort, if you're so uncomfortable that's like, this isn't fun, right? It's good stress versus bad stress. If it's, this isn't fun, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, that conversation needs to happen with a GM. If it's just, oh, this is so stressful, but it's so fun, then welcome to the roller coaster that is TTRPGs.
Yeah. I think, Chantel, going back to your question of player versus character versus both panic, I think for me, I would have to say that it's more player concern of just, I just don't know what to do. And I think some of that's just, I'm going to lean on my inexperience crutch for a bit, because I haven't been in a lot of games. I'm still learning what can and can't happen within a Savage Worlds world, or any other system for that matter. I don't know what possibilities there are. And just looking at the scenario and thinking to myself, I have no idea what to do from here. Because for me, if this was a single player video game, or I was reading a book or a story or watching a movie or something, and I was coming up with the story or writing a book that was this show, I have no idea where to go from here. And I think that's where the majority of the concern for me comes in, of what can be done when you're just at a loss for what's next.
May I say, that's okay. It's absolutely fine not to know what's going to happen next. And you're not, it might sound strange, but you're not playing a one-on-one game.
Mhm.
You don't need to come up with what's going to happen next. There are another 4 of us, also 5 of us, 4 of us. How many people are in this game? I
4
don't know
plus
anymore.
storyteller.
4 plus story. Yeah, there's another 4 of no, 5. There are 5 in this game. 4 of us that can also come up with solutions, and or we can all work together to find a solution that might work and might not. And that's the thing, like, we might come up with the perfect plan, and it might be the perfect plan, but it might not work.
Mhm.
And part of what's really kind of fun about I mean, TTRPGs in general, but also particularly streamed ones, is that you don't you have time to plan. You don't have as much time as you probably would have if you were sitting around a table in a room together where you sit for an hour and a half, like trying to figure out every single detail. I've never done that before, but it sounds really painful to me. Um, but at the same time, like you don't have that. It is very much a case of, here is the who, what, where, why, when. Here are your given circumstances. This is what environment you're in. If you personally were in this environment, what do you do? And what it sounds like would happen for Belmere, because it would happen for Frito, is nothing. And nothing is a valid option. That's why in all of the Telltale games, there was the ... because you could choose to do nothing. It had a consequence, but you could choose to do nothing. And nothing is still a choice. And I think that gets overlooked quite a bit. Yeah.
It's something that I have told Matt and Matt's group of friends, players, etc. I meant Matt's party, but Matt's group of friends. You're perfectly welcome to stick your thumb up your rear end, sit and pout in the inn because you don't like what's happening. The world doesn't stop moving. You know, you are perfectly welcome to haggle for 2 days with a storekeeper over "don't do it, I hate you" if you do. But you're welcome to do it. But the bandits won't be where they were 2 days from now. It's not a video game where you set your save point, you run around the place, days pass, but still, antagonist A is still standing in the forest waiting for his trigger, of you walking in. That's not how it works. He's stood in the forest, waited for you to show up, got bored, had the meeting you were there to interrupt, and gone off to enact the plan that the meeting had evolved around, right? That board is ever moving. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think that's a really useful perspective that you've given in the past, because it's so much like real life. You can do nothing, but you lose ground, right? If we're on a quest that has purpose for that world, then we don't want to lose ground. We don't want the bad guys to win. We don't want all of these negative consequences of us sitting and doing nothing, or deciding we'd rather be florists, right? And so we do something, even if it's not like the optimal, well-planned, perfect plan, something. We do something. We kind of get in, roll up our sleeves, and do some of the work that needs to be done, even if it's not like the flashy plan.
Well, and I think there's a difference between Chantel's idea of doing nothing in the moment, and so your character doesn't know what to do and they freeze for
Yeah.
5 or 10 or 15 minutes of that story, while the other characters do something, then that changes the situation, and then maybe your character knows what to do. And there's a difference between that and the whole party doing nothing for 2 days of game time. Like there's a difference between those two.
Right. Both are equal options, because and I absolutely agree with you. My point was, you can choose to sit and do nothing. The board will advance, and maybe when the board advances, you now see an opening you didn't see 2 days of game time before. Right? You may sit there and be like, "Oh man, there's nothing I can do against this bandit army that's coming down the well, guess we'll just let the town get done." Well, if that happens and you're hiding in a cave, now 2 days later, you can go at the back line of the bandit army, or go after a supply train, or whatever. Something has changed 2 days later. Waiting is never necessarily the wrong option. It's always an option. Because if your storyteller is your friend, and if your storyteller is as invested in the game as you are, and in reality they should be, they'll give you something to do. They'll give you a way out. no-win scenarios are bad storytelling, no matter what Captain Kirk has told us. The Kobayashi Maru is not interesting beyond... Nope, it's just not. That's why he had to cheat. So, yeah, it's... The no-win scenario probably doesn't exist. You probably have a way out. It's just about coming to grips with where you're at and choosing to trust yourself, your storyteller, and your friends, your party mates, to tell a story that leads you to the point where you get out of the unwinnable situation.
And that's, I think, where, like, I personally learned a lot from improv training, because when I was in drama school, I hated improv. But I realized when I got out of drama school that I actually didn't hate improv. It's that I didn't trust the people I was improving with. I didn't trust the people that I was in scenes with. And so I would go into a scene already doubting my decisions and doubting their decisions and feeling really uncomfortable about the entire situation. I couldn't trust that the environment and the people there would support me. So one of the things that I've taken on is that I tend to only play with people that I trust to support me in some way, shape, or form. And that comes back to the, talk to your GM, talk to your players, like talk to the other people that are around you, because they're probably also feeling that, well, I don't know how to solve this problem scenario. They're probably also disliking the environment that they're in, but they might have more of an understanding of, no, it's because of this, or it's because of that. There are things that in the environment that are making me uncomfortable, and I don't like those things. And being really specific about it can help uncover and unmask some of that fluff of discomfort.
And if you find yourself really in a scenario that you feel is unwinnable or inescapable, or your GM hasn't given you a way out, talking to your GM, be like, yo, this is what I think. A good GM will be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. He's not going to tell you what to do, but in his, her, their descriptions in the future will be more give you kind of hints, show those hooks, show those things. Even an improv GM like me, who it's a lot of what you're doing, I will create a world around that. And so a lot of the world is kind of a skeletal sort of green screen space that I composite images in as you go. I can give you more stuff that's in my mind based on that. Whereas the GM is just, well, that's too bad, figure it out. That's the not great GM. Don't interact with that one. So, it's the due respite commandments of playing RPGs. Talk to your friends, talk to your GM, have an open communication and dialogue, and you can get there.
I guess to kind of close out, have there been, since all of you have been around the block several more times than I have there been some memorable story twists, that something that you did not anticipate has happened that changed your group, your story, you personally, how you were expecting it to go this way, and then there was some hook that pulled you over somewhere else, you personally or the entire group, to make you think?
I mean, beyond all of Somerset.
Okay, yes.
Like, everyone can see me get confused in that. Huh? What's happening now? Who am I? New character sheet? Okay. I mean, that it happens everywhere and all the time.
I had one situation, and it was kind of early in a campaign, so I was able to. The character was able to grow as a character, but he was an orc, and his friend was kind of religious in their order, and they were attempting to be inducted into the Order of the Shining Tusk. And my orc character thought that it was something that could be very self-actualizing for him, but they didn't take half breeds, and he was a half orc. And so he was this very devout, um, like religious type of orc that had to find some other purpose after taking a quest with his friend who then was inducted. And so, yeah, I had a moment of a little bit of what's my motivation, and a little bit of like just kind of finding a new story to participate in, because that wasn't going to happen. Um, and what I found was what kind of organically grew out of it is that um, my orcish character wasn't inducted to the Order of the Shining Tusk, but he needed to be part of an order, part of a family, in a sense. And so in that group, he really um, grew close bonds with everybody. And so it was rewarding from the ashes of what would have been a character's disappointment.
Yeah, I think Somerset is the best example for me, because when we first went back in time, my expectations for our world at that point was that it was going to be like Groundhog's Day, if you've ever seen that movie. Like he goes back and relives the same day, and it doesn't matter what he did before. When he wakes up the next morning, it's the same day again. It didn't have any consequences, and he as a character changes due to all the things he experiences every time he relives that day, but it's all very much an on the inside, and him thinking about what he's done every time. It wasn't the butterfly effect, which I haven't actually seen that movie. um so then what I got the next session when we came back was not Groundhog's Day, which I guess from an audience perspective would actually have been a little bit boring to watch us redo the same things over and over and only tweak little tiny minor things until we finally, you know, got it right or solved the puzzle. So this is a more interesting story, but at the same time, I wanted to play Margaret the way I wrote her, and had I hadn't felt like I had gotten to do that yet. And so having having certain things picked out from what she had done before, and then that is what influences what she changed. But I was very confused, so it's not like I could control what we did before to change her in ways that I wanted to. I wasn't happy with that. So I like how Eric put how I talked with him, because that was much more mature sounding than how it actually went down. So for all of you that think he picks on me, trust me, I pick on him too. You just don't see it. So for me, that was where the world was not what I thought it was going to be. And for me, the best way to deal with that was to talk to my GM and let him know, hey, I am not happy with this. What can we do about that?
But now, with where Somerset has gone, Somerset is arguably still your most successful campaign, and arguably, in my opinion, where you have shined most as a role player and where you have seemed to have the most fun.
Well, and you did. We came up with a way so that I could be happy. The story didn't get, I don't know, trampled or ruined or messed up because one player was having a temper tantrum. So yeah, we came to a good way to make it work. And no, he didn't tell me everything that was going to happen, and it didn't work out like that. I just let him know what I was unhappy with, and he came up with a way to fix that part of it. So now I am very happy with Margaret and with the story. And
Being engaged to Von Man.
That's been true over a couple episode realities.
it seems to be what the universe wants. Maybe Margaret should give it a try this time. I don't know.
We'll find out on Saturday.
Oh, Nana, I need a minute.
You heard it here, folks. Wedding of the century.
So ready.
2020. Screw those
So
other
ready for
80
this.
years.
Yep.
Yeah, so in the end, it's just collaborate and
Mhm.
find a way to make it work, because your GM probably has a cool idea. And he probably trusts, or they probably trust you to make it even cooler. So if you don't feel like you can, or you feel like it's not as cool as they think it is, talk to him, and then you guys can work it out. And who knows, it may be super, super rewarding to do a thing.
Assuming you don't roll double ones.
Double ones.
I find
could
it
be
super rewarding. Double ones are some of my favorite experiences. We need to talk about failure.
And just speaking as a GM and having things go in a direction that you don't expect as a GM. I didn't expect you guys to jump through the gate in AG. I expected you guys to be like, nope, let's go deal with this other thing first, then we'll come back. Nope, we're just gonna go through the gate now.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Well, let's
Everlasting
roll on
winners are
random
fun.
table. Yep. Somerset City. Blue nullifying quantum several episodes back, and just be like, I'm just gonna turn off this. It's like, I'm pretty good at thinking through contingencies. You have to be a reactive improv GM. You have to really be able to kind of guess what your players are going to do and formulate basic ideas on the fly. No concept that was even an idea. Had forgotten that was on Blue's sheet as a thing, but it put us in a really cool place. And then just going back to before I streamed games, having a group of players make the decision that ignoring the army of darkness to chase a magical appearing and disappearing tower around the world for a year and a half's worth of campaign, because they found the storyline of how one character's dad disappeared more interesting than the idea of dealing with the epic war to save the country, that they just let that play out. But what was going to be this cool epic kind of wartime campaign became this epic self-actualization, find my dad, and, come to terms with that. And it's the campaign that I played in the longest, campaign I ran the longest, and it's a campaign that I have a million memories of that was never supposed to go that way. And is still has one of my coolest stories and my coolest in-player players out of character interactions of my 25 years of playing tabletop. And it all came about because they chose to ignore the plot hook and do what they wanted to do instead. So just because it's unexpected doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you're a human being and you need to adapt.
Very true. Well, thank you, everyone, including everyone listening. This has been another episode of Storyteller Studio, which is slowly devolving into Frito's self-help session, hour chat, which is not what we want it to be. But maybe we do. It's not my vision for it, but maybe there'll be a spin-off series of some other random talk show of in-depth postmortems on games. Anyway, I'm Deep Frito. You can find me at Twitter at Deep Frito, on Twitter at whatever Deep Frito. I might not ignore my account, but I probably do. similar to other people that have a Twitter that's rarely used. Sarah, hi.
That was a good segue. Good job.
Thanks.
Yes, I have a Twitter. I pretty much ignore it. Sorry. But stick around and watch me play Nora on Paddington because that'll be fun.
We will be back in 25, 30 minutes ish for Paddington Prowler. And we'll find out what Constance is up to. Constance being Chantel, for those of you that don't know character names. Hi, Chantel.
That was a segue. Hey, I'm Chantel B. Find me at Chantel B on Twitter. Also find me here in 29 minutes playing Paddington Prowler. Also find me tomorrow at Scraticus for some cleanup crew, and that will be at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then I'll be back here later this week with Deep Frito for Eternium Gate at the time this show started, in fact. Yes.
Correct.
You can also find me on my website, wordswithcolor.com. Go there. See lots of writing. Enjoy.
Deal. Matt, how was your evening?
It was lovely being on Frito's Self-Help Hour this evening. And you can find me on Twitter at orcish1_83. And yeah, that's that.
Sweet. And the man who makes it all happen, Eric.
Oh heavens, I hope I don't make it all happen.
You made this happen, including the self-help hour.
That's fair. I mean, it was your idea.
It was.
I'm Eric Taylor. Do Respite is my baby. I hope that you guys have enjoyed hanging out for Storyteller's Studio, episode 17, helping Frito overcome anxiety.
It's like part 3 of that series at this
That's
point.
all right. There's nothing wrong with that being, it being a new player help show. It's given a lot more structure than we had in the random wild craziness chats that we had for the first, 14 weeks. Catch us in a little less than 30 minutes for Paddington Prowler. It'll be fun. Catch us for Eternium Gate because things are heating up. That's an important thing to know. We got 4 weeks left before season finales on a lot of these shows. So the tension and the pressure is going to ratchet hard. So be ready for that. But until next time, I've been Eric Taylor, and on behalf of Chantel, Frito, Sarah, and Matt, good night, good luck, stay safe, stay healthy, stay the hell at home, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.